Thank you. Thanks for reminding me. Okay, so let us start to study the Lotus Sutra again. So, Miss Thân Tư and Miss Thân Như, could you view the record session that I sent the link to you?
Thưa thầy, I started to go in and was trying to figure it out, but to be honest with you, I didn't get a chance to watch it. So I was looking into different one, but when I start getting into it, I didn't get a look into the session.
Okay, thank you.
No, I haven't started either, thầy.
Oh, okay. So I mean that can you be able to view them?
I went into the website, but honestly to you, I got interested in the opening of the temple, and I was looking at that. I didn't know you opened up a temple in 2018, so I was looking to it. So I never got around to looking at the session.
Oh, I see. Actually, I emailed the link to you, and thầy giáo pháp he create that kind of login so that this is for our groups to view our record session. Thầy giáo pháp, yeah, go ahead, please.
So are you gonna, do we create our own login and password, and how?
Yeah, thầy giáo pháp, can you explain, please?
Did you receive your username and password? Username is your email, and the password I sent to you individually. Did you receive it?
I did not receive that.
Really?
So if you can kindly send it back to me.
I sent out a long time ago, well, a few weeks ago.
Yes, I did receive it.
Oh, you did receive it?
Yes, and it has a step-by-step of how to log on, and each of us has our individual ID.
That's correct. So you did. So I will send to you Thân Tư after the class, so you can have it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So let us move on. Yeah, let me share the screen with you about the sutra. Yeah, Thân Thiên, can you read, please?
The Buddha said to Sariputta, the Buddhas, the thus come ones, simply teach and convert the bodhisattvas. All the things they do are at all times done for this one purpose. They simply wish to show the Buddha wisdom to living beings and enlighten them to it. So Sariputta, the thus come ones have only a single Buddha vehicle, which they employ in order to preach the law to living beings. They do not have any other vehicle, a second one or a third one. Sariputta, the law preached by all the Buddhas of the 10 directions is the same as this.
Yes, please summarize.
So all the Buddhas from the 10 directions teach in the same way, to show them the Buddha wisdom and to all beings and to enlighten them. So the Buddha only showed them only one what was it, the Buddha, and only showed them the one Buddha vehicle. not the 2 or 3 vehicles.
Okay. So what's the meaning then?
So the meaning is, so the Buddha does not teach them the Arahat vehicle or Project Buddha vehicle, but only show them the Buddha vehicle.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, so yeah, last week we learned about the Buddha mentioned this purpose of appearance on the earth, right? In this sorrow world, to teach us how to recognize our pure nature, Buddha nature, so that we can uh, uh, activate that nature within ourselves, and that's the only goal that the Buddha try to teach us, not anything else. He doesn't want to teach uh, uh, the way that arhats attain nirvana to get out of the birth cycle, or uh, the solitary Buddhas that attain enlightenment by themselves only. So his purpose is to help us to activate on Buddha nature within ourselves. Yeah. That's what he mentioned about here. So that's what we left last time. So let's us discuss deeply about how we recognize that kind of Buddha nature in the practical sense. And actually, when I first read the Mahayana Sutra, uh, it's not easy for me to understand, uh, recognize what the Buddha tried to say when we talk about Buddha nature until I read the Shurama Sutra. So before I explain, anyone can explain how we recognize, at least recognize pure nature or Buddha nature first, uh, before we really activate it, we really live with it. So how could we recognize it within ourselves then? Anyone has idea? Yes, Mr. Temi.
So I think for me, what happened with me is I saw it outside of myself first. So in like nature, and the flowers and just the beauty of nature, seeing the divine there, and then with children, having children, of course the divinity there, and then for me, I actually came back in touch with it at a yoga studio. It was the fun. It's just being when you get so broken, being able to be surrounded by people that are able to help you find that divinity back within yourself.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Yeah. How about you, William? Do you have anything to share? How could we recognize pure nature or Buddha nature then?
Yes, I'm aware of some of the teachings of how to, and I think so far it's eluded me. The teachings seem clear, but one that I know of from a Zen series of phrases is calmly see that all is one, and by themselves false views will go. So in allowing our mind to still through not giving rise to thinking, so in giving up the trying to figure out, or the trying to attain something, or the trying to get somewhere, but while still remaining aware, at some point we begin to glimpse the like the substance of awareness itself. And that thing which isn't, it's not created by the objects that we see or the things that we're aware of, and it doesn't end when those objects change or are no longer present. But it's the ground. They talk about it being like kind of like the mind ground, or through which our small mind springs from. Our thinking mind is dependent upon this one mind that encompasses, everything. And so I would say the way to see it is through meditation and through actually in a giving up of any sort of trying or effort, and in a state where the mind's not obscured by other objects of thought, that then we can directly experience our nature, what we are, that underlies everything.
Thank you. Yeah, how about you, John? You understand about Buddha nature, how we recognize it, John?
I think I'll say just a bit. It took me a while just to understand.
Okay. For Thân Thiền, what do you think?
I think all living beings have a Buddha nature, but there are few of us be aware of our Buddha nature. But for the many, they don't see their Buddha nature. So the Buddha nature is hiding inside of us. The Buddha nature is covered by our own suffering, such as hatred, anger, delusion. But so in order to uncover our Buddha nature, we have to know how to remove all the suffering, such as hatred, anger, delusion. So I think we need to bring happiness, joy, peace to ourselves as well as to others. And we have to do lots of practice so that we can be able to uncover and know our Buddha nature in us.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, Miss Thân Như, could you explain how could we recognize it then?
I don't know if I can explain it. Hey, I don't know if I know it well enough. I do agree that all of us have that potential in us. And I think that part of it is the willingness and the wanting of being able to recognize it in ourselves. Based on what I've read, in the most important sense for us to work on initially before we can look inward to help us look inward for our Buddha nature is to work on the sense of hearing. If we are able, and once you work on the sense of hearing and are able to and you had alluded to this before, if you work on it where you are not disturbed by the things that you hear, and you are not swayed or stirred by the things that you hear, and you can work on that so that you can detach and not be bothered by the things that you hear that can invoke emotions in you. So then other senses can also be, you can start to eliminate the false the falseness of other senses as well. But the most important sense to work on initially is the hearing, and eventually all the other, it seems like it's a wall. When one, or a fence, when one part of it has been eradicated, and the first sense that is eradicated is the falseness of the hearing sense, then other senses will also follow suit, and that is how you become more pure and more able to recognize the true, or to bring out the true nature, thus the Buddha nature. That's my understanding of it, but I feel that that is more of a very mature step. So you have to get to a certain point before you can understand that point. But for the average layperson to recognize their Buddha nature initially, I don't have a methodical answer to that. I just know, if you can recognize the compassion in yourself, when you can recognize that, or you can recognize that you don't want to have as much attachment, that you can regard things with as little ignorance as possible. But in order to do all that, you have to work on it in terms of meditation, in terms of looking inwardly to your true nature, where you can look at things and not look at it in terms of emotion, and be able to recognize the impertinence and the falsity that is all around us. So I think it requires a lot of wisdom, and that is something that you have to work on. The willingness to be able to work on that, and the first step of that is meditation, perhaps is the first step in looking into your Buddha nature.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, how about Miss Thang Tử?
Yes, Tay. I think everybody already said most of it. All of it already. But as far as for myself, looking into Buddha nature is what I have learned. Knowing is one thing, applying it or recognizing it is another. Because we're not isolated, right? We deal with people day in and day out. Like for me, for businesses, it's difficult in that recognizing not to detach yourself into emotion. For example, if you deal with one person, you can talk to them one way, and you can talk the same way to someone else. They might not have the same feeling as you. And what you want to do is recognize and learn and understand each person, their personality, and using your compassion to apply to each person, understanding and not quickly blame people. And so those type of compassion you need to really learn, and it's an experience. So one of the things is being patient, right? So part of it is, for me, as learning something from Buddhism, is being patient and not being angry, not being quick to judge. Use more of the human compassion side and understand that nobody wants to be a bad person. There's always something that underlying that maybe we don't know, so don't be too quick to judge people. The other thing that I learned over the years too, Tay, by taking classes with you about Buddhism, is trying to detach yourself. So in the past, let's just say, money, when you recognize about businesses, you realize, there's certain things about money that is going to cost you money. So what I try to do is that to detach yourself in some of this thinking, it does help, because if you look at the whole thing is with Buddhism is we talk about karma. So I apply a lot of that, and it helps me as far as not being so attached, and to where you become attached where you can't sleep. So over the years, I have learned to detach a lot. When I get nervous or I have fear of things, I start applying that. Life is impermanent, and you can't be too attached to things or material stuff. And so that will help in my Buddha nature. So those are just some of the experience that I've gone through that has helped me.
Thank you, Miss Thông Tư. Yes, thầy giáo pháp, please.
Yeah, more right. I think this is a very tough question, but basically, it's when we're talking about Buddha nature, it means that it's the eight consciousness, the alaya one. But before we come to that level, I just try to start from beginning. That means the seeing nature and the hearing nature. So that means from the eye or from the ear, whenever we deal with the external object, but our mind still in the stillness, it's not arrive due to the external world. That means that how that means we don't have the duality in this case. But how do we come to this level? We have to do a lot of work in order to come to this level. So before we can be able to see our true nature, we have to see what is the false nature. That means the falsity, right? The false nature is, so basically in the eight consciousness, it's divided into 4 layers. The first layer is the 5 sense consciousness. That means the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, and the body. It represents for it dealing with the outside world. And those things give us a lot of the falsity of the, that means all those things arrive with we always have a distinguish. One, we have to arrive with the thought. It's always away from the true nature. And also this 5 things here, they connect to the mind consciousness. Mind consciousness, that means the 6 consciousness, that means the brain. And the brain is basically, we are using for thinking, for analyzing, for visualization, for planning. This is the high level. When we look at the ocean, right? In the ocean, the highway, the high tidal wave, this is what you can see it from your thought. It's just like the monkey thought. And it's easier for us to see it. But when we come now to the 7 consciousness, that means the mana, it relates to the cell. It has 4 different types of cells. Cell delusion, cell view, cell bright, and cell dark. And this is a subtle consciousness compared to the 6 consciousness. And this is even harder for us to detect, to see it. If without meditation, we cannot go here. And this is the one of the toughest consciousness, because all the suffering come from here. The 7 consciousness we call the mana consciousness. It also have another name called the emotional affliction or emotional feeling. It play or suffering come from here. In order to, when we not able to see our own feeling arise and come and go, then we cannot be able to eliminate the suffering. This is very tough compared to the mind consciousness, the thinking. The thinking, we can see it, but this level is tough. But when we be able to see it, then we go deep into the 8 consciousness. That means the alaya. That's what we call the storehouse. This is where all the knowledge, the experience, the karma we create in the past, and also the Buddha nature is in here. And this is deep into the deep ocean we call the most subconsciousness. That means we need to have a very deep calm mind in order to accept this this information. Yeah, more. Yeah. I should be come back.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Let me review what the Buddha say in the Dharma Sutra, that he illustrates how we can recognize our Buddha nature. And actually, it's so important that we need to discuss and understand. Yeah, definitely, it's not easy for us to uh, live with it in our daily life, especially nowadays. But at least, if we can recognize and trust ourselves that we have that nature, and so it will take time for us to uh, get back that type of inheritance. Mm, So, but at least in the practical sense, we need to recognize um, that nature within ourselves is more precious. And of course, it's like the initial steps for us to um, activate it or to live with it in the fully way. And so in the Shivama Sutra, in one part, the Buddha asks Venerable Rahula to strike the bell. And I think I told you this story before, but I just want to repeat again. So after that, he asked Venerable Ananda whether he could hear the sound of the bell or not. So definitely, Venerable Ananda said yes. And later on, the Buddha asked him whether you still hear the sound of the bell. Venerable Ananda say no. So he asked Venerable Rahula to strike the bell and ask Venerable Ananda the same question and get the same answer. So later on, the Buddha say that, wow, why are you so confused today? One times you say you can hear, another time you say you cannot hear. And the Buddha make conclusion that actually the Buddha nature is still within yourself, especially within your hearing nature. Whether someone strike the bell or whether someone made the sound or not, you still have that ability to hear. So let me try this bell for a while, and after that we can discuss it again. Okay. So please take a few moments after I hit the bell, and I will turn to hit the bell probably a couple of times, and we can discuss about this. Okay. Yeah, okay, thank you. So again, we like Venerable Ananda. When someone strike the bell or like hit the bell, we can hear the sound of the bell. Later on, there's no more sound. That's our discrimination of the sound of the bell. So this is normal for us, for common people, because we get used of attaching to the sound. We used to attach to the sight. So whenever something occurs, whether it's through our ears or through our vision, we have the tendency to move along with that type of sound or sight, and depend upon whether they are pleasant and unpleasant, our mind will be fluctuated, depend upon that type of sound, sight, or smell. In the sense of like or dislike, um, good or bad, with that kind of tendency, we always have this kind of fluctuation in our mind. It is not easy for us to recognize our nature. The nature is awakening nature that's go beyond duality of good or bad, like or dislike, and so forth. So when we listen to anything, whether it's the sound of the bell or whether the sound of the people who criticize us or praise us, and we just recognize here we have that kind of ability. And we have that kind of uh, recognition of the sound of the bell or any kind of sound. That type of recognition, that type of awakening, that is the way we can recognize our nature. That's what we call Buddha nature. Does that make sense, Mr. Tammy? You understand that?
So does that mean that it goes in and out? Like you can't recognize it all the time, but you may recognize it at this point, and then it goes away, and then you'll recognize it again.
In the sense that if we go beyond the pleasant or unpleasant sound, we just recognize this is the sound. That's all. Let's say someone criticizes us, right? That's the sound. And someone praises us, that's also the sound. So if we go beyond that type of criticism and praising, and just recognize the sound, that recognition is our awakening nature, the pure nature that go beyond the attachment of like or dislike, or pleasant or unpleasant. It makes sense to you?
Yes.
It's hard, it's pure hard. As much we understand the concept, as much we recognize it in the practical sense, we know, yes, that is our nature. But of course, it takes a lot of work for us to live with completely, like the Zen master. But at least we know that is our nature, the nature that go beyond our discrimination of pleasant and unpleasant, like or dislike. It makes sense now?
Yeah, so the middle path.
Yeah,
Right.
kind of middle path. Yeah, kind of middle path, but go beyond that, go beyond our discrimination of those sounds, of those signs. Because most of the time, let's say we have the tendency that whichever thing we see, whichever thing we hear, most of the time we will swing our mind in two poles. Or we like that person, or we don't like that person, or we like that sound, or that music, or I don't like that music. So it's not easy for us, like you say, to remain in neutral ground, or to go beyond that kind of poles, like, dislike, pleasant, and unpleasant. It makes sense now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that's in practical sense, that is our nature there. As much we recognize us, of course, it's not easy for us to live with this, especially in our normal life, unless it takes time for us to stay in the forest, a mountain, or some secluded place, so that we can calm our mind enough, not to let our emotions, not to let our full thinking to our emotion to jump on the sound or the sign that we just seen, just saw, or just heard. It makes sense now? Yeah. William, is this understandable? What do you think?
Yes, I think it is understandable in the sense of that we can distinguish our, we could say, small mind that is associated with an individual's self and identity as being reactive to hearing, seeing, smelling, those different things. And so having that good and bad, but there is a, I don't know if you would say a deeper or a more essential, but an aspect of what we are, or what we are, that it's unchanged by those phenomena. So if the sound is good, it doesn't change that mind at all. If the sound is bad, it doesn't change the mind. The ability to hear remains regardless of the sound. And that I understand something in it. It's kind of hard to verbalize it, because it's like, it's not a thing that you could point at and say, this is the nature. It feels almost like kind of seeing it out of the corner of my eye. But I know that experience from like when I used to have really bad back pain. The best way would be to like lay down and then let not fight the pain, but just see the pain and allow it to be a pure sensation. So it's not like get to the point where the way I perceived it was that it wasn't bad, but that it was just like it was just a strong sensation. And that would usually help by staying in that state where I wasn't resisting it. So I think I do understand it some.
Yeah. So that's why in the Zen tradition they say that you need to have what either pure awareness or naked awareness without any kind of conceptualize the idea or the thinking. Before the thinking, we need to recognize that kind of nature. That's what we call pure recognition. So when we conceptualize some things, let's say, if I hold the bell up here, right? So most of the time, automatically we think, oh, okay, I like this bell, or I don't like this bell, or this bell is made from gold or metal, whichever. So whenever we see some any kind of object, somehow in our mind we formulate that kind of conceptions, and of course this block our pure mind. That's what we call the pure nature of Buddha nature there. So we need to go beyond that. We need to train ourselves to live with that nature, that what we call in the common terms, intuition. Within the split second, like when we see someone else, within a split second, yes, before we have the thinking, oh, I like that person, somehow in our mind, we recognize, we have the good feeling with that person. So before I say, oh, I like that, I like you, I like that person. So when we put something in wording, in explanations, even in our thought, our thinking process, that is true nature there. But if we conceptualize some things, if we put them in words, if we explain them orally and so forth, it's too late for us to understand the reality of life, reality of that object. So that's why the Buddha say that we need to see the things as the way they are, not to bend, not to manipulate them in the way that we used to bend, used to see. For example, let's say, again, for us, the bell, right, for Buddhists, the bell is so precious, it's so useful for us because we use this in our ceremony. But for someone, I mean, that non-Buddhist, they would not know what we're supposed to do with this object then. It's strange for them. It's weird. They have that kind of conception. But for us, yes, this object, this bell is so useful. So for us, we attach to that kind of concept, that kind of bell. Oh, this is be useful for us. But for non-Buddhists, no, it's so weird. So whether it's we see that it's a useful object, or whether other people see it's a weird object, the same, we conceptualize this bell already. We don't see the bell in the way it is. So that's what we need to go beyond. And if we train our mind to go beyond those kind of thinking, those kind of conceptions, those kind of analysis, analytical thinkings, that's how we live it up to nature there. That's why when the Petra, when he was slave man and listened to a Buddhist who decided the Diamond Sutra, in that part it say that don't attach to the don't rely on the sound to activate your mind. Don't rely on the vision or the sight to activate your mind, or to rely. Don't rely upon the sound. Don't rely upon this sight to activate your mind. Just rely upon nothingness. You can activate your mind. Nothingness means there's no attachment there. Is that clear now? Our Miss Thang Như, is that understandable?
Yes, Thầy. Actually, it is very understandable. Your explanation, if I understand it the way you explain it, it's very simplistic to understand. It's very difficult to apply. It seems like you're saying stick to the objectivity. Stay objective, meaning stick to the facts of what it is and not be subjective, meaning don't have any discrimination, don't have any, don't be swayed. So keep to the fact. It is a bell. It doesn't have to be a good bell. It doesn't have to be a pretty bell. It doesn't have to be a good sound. So hearing what people say, you just stick to the fact of what people say, as opposed to, oh, what he's saying disturbs me, or what he is saying delights me. If I am seeing an object, it is an object. It is not necessarily a nice object or an ugly object. And what you're saying is, do not have a preconceived notion or a preconceived attachment to whatever it is, and that will allow you to stay to the true nature. Now, and by saying that, I also have a question, and I'm going to play the devil's advocate, meaning I'm going to try to go to the other extreme. If you say so by your explanation, then when you bow to the figure of the Buddha, are you not placing an attachment to an image so that it connects you to an idea or to a devotion? In that respect, is that also not part?
Yeah, that question is so important. Thank you. You finished your question, Mr. Thang Như?
Yes, that's my question, is when you say, so and I understand, we have an image, we have a statue of a Buddha, we have, or whichever statue you have to symbolize your devotion, or when we bow to the Buddha, when we bow down and we put our ego to the absolute minimum, when we bow to the Buddha on a daily basis, do we also not, when we do that, are we not attaching a significance? And by doing so, are we not violating the Buddha nature by attaching or making a connection?
Wow, that's
so
yeah. Okay, yes. So that's so important question. That's actually in Vietnamese term, before we bow the Buddha, we do the chanting. We say in Vietnamese. Let me say, okay, and explain later in English. Phật chúng sanh tánh thường rỗng lặng, đạo cảm thông không thể nghĩ bàn. Probably you may not understand, right? Phật chúng sanh, that's Phật, that means the Buddha. Chúng sanh, that means living beings. Tánh thường rỗng lặng, the nature always pure and empty. Empty in the sense that there's no attachment at all. That means the Buddha nature and sentient beings nature are pure. Is understandable, Ms. Thang Như? right?
Yes,
Yeah,
I do understand.
yeah. Đạo cảm thông không thể nghĩ bàn. So when you live with that purity, you will get the response from the Buddha blessing in considerate way. So, okay, let me put this aside and let me tell you the story. That let's say relate to how we worship the Buddha. One Zen master in the winter time, he stopped by at a temple, and that temple that have the three uh, Buddhist statue. The one is the middle is the Amitabha Buddha. Another one is the compassionate Bodhisattva, Quang Am. Another one is restrained Bodhisattva. All of them were wooden statue. So this Zen master somehow he walked into the Buddha hall. Of course, he asked permission to stay overnight. So what? Because too cold. So he brought down one Buddha statue and burned it. And the abbot, that means the abbot, that means the chief monk of that temple, went out and said, "How could you burn my Buddha statue?" And this Zen master said, "Well, I burned the Buddha statue so that I can find the Buddha relic." You understand the relic, right? And,
Yes.
this abbot said, "Well, how could you find the Buddha relic in this Buddha statue?" And so this Zen master said, "Well, if you could not find anything if you could not find the Buddha relic, so I would bring down another Buddha statue to burn more." At that moment, the abbot recognized that Zen master teaching. You understand that, William?
I think I get the gist. Were you saying the Buddha's relic, or he's looking for the Buddha's what?
Here. So let me repeat again. So he walked into the Buddha hall, and it's too cold, right? In the past, they would not have any heater. They used the wood to burn for heating, right? So this Zen master, he took down a wooden Buddha statue and burned it. Okay, and so when the abbot, that's mean the leader of the monks, went out and complained, "How could you burn my Buddha statue?" And so this master said, "Well, I burned it so that I can find Buddha relics." You know Buddha relic, right? After
Like relic, RELIC.
Yeah. Yes. And so the abbot said, "Well, how could you find Buddha relic in this wooden statue?" And so the Zen master said, "Well, if not, I would burn more." Make sense now? At that moment, the abbot recognized the teaching of the Zen master. You understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I mean, he seems to be pointing at the the relic part is what gets me, because couldn't you even do the thing with a Buddha relic? Because ultimately, like, we want to realize our own Buddha nature and our own like the own mind of the Buddha that's our nature. And I would think even if you had a relic, a Zen master could do the same thing with the relic. And he's like, "I'm trying to find the Buddha nature in this relic, and that's why I'm burning it." So the relic part I find a little confusing.
Okay. Yeah, Miss Thân Như, you understand this story?
Is the relics you're talking about, the reliquaries,
Sorry.
did you hear
Yeah, not
me
yet.
say?
Can you try one more time, please?
The relics that you're talking about is like the bones or
Yes.
the remains of the Buddha. Is that
Yes,
correct?
the man of the Buddha. Yes.
Right. So I do understand I understand that story. And yes, it makes sense to me. He is trying to teach the abbot that don't have an attachment to this statue. It is, you're not going to, it is not representative of, it's not the sun and the moon and the stars that represent the true Buddha. The true Buddha is within your own nature, not representative of a tangible manifestation. So there is no material, solid manifestation of the Buddha. So don't put so much importance into it. That's my understanding.
Yeah. So that's why I want to share with you these stories to illustrate my response to your questions. So when we bow to Buddha, yeah, as human, as people like us, right now we have so much attachment. So at least we follow the Buddha teachings so that we can do the good deeds to practice meditation to calm our mind. That's the thing we can do in the conventional ways. Without the Buddha statue, there's no way for us to like grab on. But if we recognize as this type of statue, just symbolize the Buddha nature representation in the conventional way, not the ultimate way. So that's why for the abbot, he attached so much to those wooden statues. That's why he complained when the Zen master burned the Buddha statue and say that I want to look for the relic that we common Buddhists like to worship. You understand, William? Right? The born, the repentant Buddha. So that Zen master could help that the abbot to be awakened, that don't attach even to the Buddha statue. You need to look within yourself. You need to recognize your nature, not the Buddha relic out there. But of course, for common people, we need that. We need the temple. We need the Buddha statue so that we can look on why we still practicing the way, because we still live in duality. We still have all kind of afflictions, all kind of attachment. We need them. But for the Zen master, they say that we need to even let go of those attachments so that we can live with that pure nature. In the sense that when someone cross the river, you don't need to carry the boat anymore. You need to leave the boat behind. But for us, we have not crossed the river yet. You understand that? You understand that concept? So we need this help boat to help us to sail through the water to get all the shore. But when someone recognizes pure nature or Buddha nature, they don't need to carry on anymore. So that's the beauty of Zen tradition. Then, did you understand that, Mr. Thân Tử? You understand that idea?
Yes, Tay, I do. Thank you, Tay.
And yeah, I will appreciate that, William. You say that when someone have so much pain, right? You just ask them to recognize their pain in the pure way, right? Not to react, right? Not to have any kind of fear or any kind of concern about that kind of pain. So eventually that can be fading away. Is that right?
Yes.
How can you explain to them in that process? And that's just, I think it is still applicable in daily life, especially in that case, right? Yeah, can you explain how?
Yes. Smile, will you stop moving that? It makes a lot of noise. You're going to hear it in the microphone. Well, in a way, pain doesn't give people another option. Unless they're going to take a pain medication, there's a lot of things we can kind of avoid or get away from, but someone who has pain in their body, it, either forces them to suffer or to transcend the pain. So it can actually turn into a positive thing, because it can drive someone to realizing that state of mind that doesn't have an opinion about the sensation. So how to do it is, I would generally tell people to lay down, and simply not resist the pain. If the pain is drawing on their attention and it's all they can do is to feel the pain, to then let go, like, okay, let the pain pull them towards it. And then notice as they give the pain all of their attention, what happens. They're not trying to make it go away. They're not trying to change it. They're not trying to figure it out, but like attempting to just look at it like you would look at the moon or the stars or any sort of phenomena, and to acknowledge the thoughts that are around it and the feelings that are around it, but to gradually, like, not really not attend to those thoughts or those feelings a whole bunch, but just stay with the sensation of the pain, just like one could stay with the sensation of breathing, and not moving in any direction from there, just letting that sensation draw the awareness. And then people can get to a point where it gradually it becomes more of a sensation that they're not resisting. Of course, then when someone gets up and starts going about their day, they're going to tend to automatically go back into the other mind state of having aversion to it and getting upset about it. But it can be a recurrent practice someone uses, where gradually they'll be less reactive.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, again, then let me go back to your question, Mr. Thang Như. Yes, when we bow to Buddha, yes, because we as human, we still have all kind of attachment, all kind of afflictions. So we bow to him, to his statue, in the way that we respect and make the vows to follow his teaching, so that we could do good deeds, to practice meditation, to calm our mind, and so forth in the conventional way. But if we recognize our own nature, there's no need to have him, to have his statue anymore. But again, we need that because we still have all kind of mental afflictions. It makes sense now, Mr.
Yes, thank.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. I really like that story.
Yeah, and in Zen tradition, I love those story. The Zen master, most of the time they would not say much, but they act out in a pure way, instead of explain things in a series of theories and so forth, maybe confuse people. But they just act out. There's many stories. At first it's really funny, but if we understand, it has a deeper meaning instead. All right. So anyway, so great. So we don't study much today, but I like to explain that again. Every one of us has that nature. That's nature. That's purity. That pure awareness or naked awareness that within ourselves. So, but we are preconditional, or we have all kind of bias towards things that we encounter, interact with in our daily life, and we get used of that kind of bias, that kind of prejudice all the time, so most of the time. So that's why if we go beyond that kind of prejudice or bias, to have that pure awareness, or to use our intuition in the pure way, will be more safe. That's what we call in the conventional terms. Yes, our pure nature, good nature, is similar as intuition. The first instant we see other people, the first instant we heard something else, that's go beyond the conceptualization of our thought, or the formation of our verbal expression. So if we can recognize us, if we can have that kind of pure awareness, That's how we live with it. Of course, even me, it's not easy until I practice meditation, calm down my mind, and stay with that awareness. But again, at least we understand we have that nature. That's the whole concept of this Lotus Sutra. The Buddha wants us to recognize is so at least with that kind of recognition, we strongly believe that this is our. We don't need to seek outside there. And eventually, if we have times, eventually we would activate this. We would get back to that inheritance. And before we finish up today, there one student that went to see a famous Zen master, Ma Tổ. So that Zen master say, well, you know, your mind is the Buddha mind. And this student, yeah, he remembered that sentence, and he went back to the forest to do meditation and to live with that sentence. Your mind is a Buddha mind. And one day, he sent, that the Zen master want to test out his student. So he sent another student, another monk, who went there and told that monk, you know, nowadays, the Zen master, our teacher, said that no, your mind is not the Buddha mind. And so what happened then? That student, he said, well, no matter what he say, I always believe my mind is Buddha mind. Forget that you can go. So because he had confidence that he recognized the pure nature there. So no matter what people say, he lived with that. But of course, for us, we hear so many times, oh, yes, we have Buddha nature and so forth. But we could not understand, could not recognize how much more we live with it. But of course, now with this Lotus Sutra, the Buddha repeat again, the reason why he appeared on this earth is because he wants to show us that pure nature, pure awareness of what we call Buddha nature there. He wants us to activate, to live with it, not just enter Nirvana by itself. Okay. So any more question? Any more discussion before we end today? Is it understandable, Miss Tammy?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's sustainable for sure.
Yeah. About Thân Thiên, you understand that concept?
Yes, Thầy. Yes.
Okay. All right. So any question? Any more? Okay. If not, let us conclude our meeting today. Go ahead, Thân Thiên. Can you say Namo Shakti-Buddha, please?
Namo Sakyamuni Buddha. Namo Sakyamuni Buddha. Namo Sakyamuni Buddha.
Thank you. See you next Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, Tay, and everyone. It was a good class.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.